Do you understand what I'm asking? If I am saying that my sprint, my iteration is 2 weeks, correct? When would the QA team get to see the software? Please, yeah.
Okay, ITL players. Okay, please come to Bangalore.
Still, the audience goes away. It is like basically Salman Khan movie not running. And I'm thinking that I'm the Salman Khan here, right? And I'm coming out to be basically nowhere close to what I was expecting. But anyways, hopefully you already had some fun, and whoever are staying, we'll basically go through that. Let's have whatever fun we can, okay? And so the question here is, when we're talking about a sprint, right? Sprint is, let's say, 2 to 4 weeks, correct? And I ask you, when basically does basically a testing team or a tester, if you look at the Scrum methodology, they say there is nobody called as designated as a tester or a developer. Everybody is a Scrum team. If somebody is playing a tester role, when would they see the application first time? Okay. So what we are saying is that it is not at the end of the sprint that the testing team gets it, correct? In the morning you might have heard about mini waterfalls. What is a mini waterfall? That if I have an application being done in an iterative manner, and the application basically is given to the testing team or for testing at the end. Now that will not basically become agile. Many of the companies whom we are talking to and who are implementing QA teams with basically their agile team, the QA team sits separately, the development team sits separately, and what happens is that when the development is done, they give testing to a different QA team, and the QA team is lagging 1 sprint behind. Now that is actually a completely wastage of the agile methodology, and that is even worse than a mini waterfall. In a mini waterfall, what would happen is that the application is still given at the end and they will fix it. Here what would happen is the testing team is testing 1 sprint behind, and that basically kills it. Okay, so let me show you what actually happens. Can you look at this diagram and see what is going on? Is it visible at the back? So what is basically here? If I say that we have got sprints, right? Within the sprint there is something called as drops. And as you said, that the drop can come to a testing team within 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. Which means that whatever people develop, testing team knows about it and they would actually be able to test whatever has come that far. So what happens is, rather than testing at the end, they start moving testing even earlier. Actual test execution. The preparation activities anyways, we'll have to be smarter in doing that. The regular way of test preparation does not work. In our case, what happens now is that your actual implementation and actual build starts moving little earlier, and it can, these are called as drops, it can be builds, it can be whatever you want to call, okay? Now this is what actually happens in a true agile methodology or companies which are doing it correctly, okay? Now we'll basically get into our second set of agile hackathon. The first one we gave you the entire application, correct? And you basically tested it and you found defects. In this case, we are basically going to ask you again, how many of you are having smartphones here? Alright, so can we form groups? So let's basically form whatever groups we can. So all the people who have working smartphones with 3G enabled, can you please come here and we'll form groups. We'll do it in a different group now. Volunteers again, please. Please.
Normal data connection.
Yeah, normal data connection. The application would not be that bandwidth sensitive. It should be something which you should be able to browse, okay? I am going to share you sprint information, and like the previous, basically the diagram that we have, what we will give you is basically we will give you 2 sprints. Every sprint will define a time, okay? Because of the size of the sprint is known to me, I am going to ask you that you have limited amount of time to test that application, okay? So the first sprint has got 3 drops, and second sprint has also got 3-4 drops. I'll disclose what is in there, okay? And this is how basically the application and the information is available to you. So what is happening is, can you note down these URLs? These URLs, there are 3 URLs. We are saying 122.169.97.49:9001 traffic mukti sprint, and it is case sensitive, guys. Make sure that you have it noted down somewhere, okay? Don't start unless and until I ask you. Involvement of testers is lagging big time. And as I said earlier, that there are organizations which say that normal testers, basically it is very, very tough for them to work. And there is something called as mini waterfalls. All this is happening. So it's important that we all learn practical way of doing agile testing, because whatever you have experienced today is just a very small part of whatever we probably can help you learn. Concept is that how you become smart. How many of you heard about mind map testing technique? Have you used that? Right, so which techniques do we apply? If I ask you this question, how many of you are ISTQB certified? Are we using some of the techniques? We do learn equivalence partitioning, boundary value, right? But if I ask you that you have got basically a graphical user interface with 2 fields on it or 3 fields on it, whatever you learn in foundation level is basically very, very minimal that you can't even use it in your real life. Okay? Another thing is, I'm talking about, how many of you heard about pairwise testing and orthogonal arrays? Now, are these relevant and should we learn this? It's not only about agile. I think that these are some things which will help us understand how can we optimize our work. So pairwise testing is one. When you have got basically X number of values to input, it can be reduced to as low as 0.006%. So we're talking about if you have got 8 lakh values to be input, it can be brought down to 40, 50, 60 values or combination of values to be input. And the result is still 98 or 98% coverage. And how do you do it in an agile setup? Again, when I'm talking about mind map testing technique, this would be something which will help you analyze and which will help you basically coin down the scenarios. In my experience, the biggest gap that I see is people have basically less time to write scenarios. We are all writing test cases and scripts, we write all the steps, but if we spend good amount of exercise and doing a mind map exercise as a group, so since we are running little less on time, I had planned to do a mind map technique, which probably we do a lot of meetups and all, we'll have a session. So what would happen is collectively, if I basically run through an agile concept, and if you all come down with my post-it notes and we all do an agile workshop using mind map techniques, you will be surprised that in half an hour, we'll be able to find 200 scenarios. And is that good enough for us to basically start doing testing? Now those are the concepts which can be implemented in not only in agile, but non-agile concepts as well. So the biggest gaps that I see is that a lot of us basically are lagging behind. And if you see the effectiveness, have you seen that when you start finding defects, how many of those defects link back to your test cases? Have you ever tried to analyze that the test cases that I'm writing, 10,000 test cases, how many of those test cases gave you defects? Go and check it out. That is a very, very high number. If you basically go and check it out, you will be surprised that the number of test cases which you write and number of test cases which fail is basically far apart. And that is where I think since we get a lot of time, in a normal project we have enough time to do things, right? But in an agile setup, if we guys go and want to become testers, another story is, do you know what is the industry moving towards? And we did an analysis, we found out that 83% of the projects are moving or already moved to agile in US. And the same number is from Europe as well. Australia is not far behind. So the countries which are behind is obviously all this, we can talk about Malaysia, South Africa, they're not thinking about agile as of now. But us in India, and if your client is asking you to do something about agile, I think you got to be familiar with the methodology. You got to be interacting with it. Another point that we have understood is, if you look at the number of people who are certified in ISTQB, do you know how many people around the world would be certified in ISTQB? Any rough numbers? For 400,000, 4 lakhs. Okay, and this is an official number. Okay, we probably maybe more. We're talking about 2013 figures. I'm a hardcore Indian. My email address is also adijindia@gmail.com. That's my personal address. But these are my 2 other emails. And there's another one, aditya.garg@QAAgility.com. My request would be that if you connect with me on LinkedIn or on Twitter, we are fairly active. And the Agile Testing Alliance page on Facebook is simply, if you type facebook.com/Agile Testing Alliance, you will find us. Okay? And if you want to attend those meetups, again, all these are free of cost. We would love to have you participate. It's a community that we are trying to build up, and all volunteers are all welcome to participate in there. Okay.